What's up, everybody? It's Tori Talley with Servolution. Welcome to the Serve Brew. Hope you have your coffee ready or whatever your little drink of choice is. I have a very special guest with us today. Many of you guys probably know of Refuge Church in Huntsville, Alabama. Pastor Jason Parks has been a guest on the Serve Brew in the past with us and shared just some incredible ideas. That's where the church that we found the idea of rooms of refuge. A lot of you guys have heard of that, where they do dream room makeovers for children with illnesses, terminal illnesses, and they just come in and like love on those families. So they shared that guide with us. They have a nursing home campus with their church. They've done all kinds of just amazing creative things and just have a beautiful heart to serve their community. And they have an incredible role. They have an incredible social worker on their staff who's in charge of connections and care. And her name is Meghan Watson. Welcome to the server, Meghan.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. You guys, Meghan is like the coolest, raddest person. And y'all know that I am all about individuals. I'm all about stories and the one, but I also like have this big picture kind of role too. And Meghan is like that same. She understands and loves how those things fit together. So her role is just incredible. And I wanted to invite her in today to get a peek into her world. She's a genius. But before we start all that, I got to do the icebreaker question.
Yeah.
Meghan, what is your Starbucks order coffee of choice?
Oh goodness, I'm pretty much a regular kind of coffee drinker, but when it comes to Starbucks, I'm just a holiday kind of person. So when the holidays roll around, you'll probably be able to find me there with the pumpkin spice and the peppermint, and I just love anything seasonal. So.
That's awesome. I respect staying classic. That's good. That's good. Old school with it. But yes, I'm the same way. I don't care if people judge me. I'm like pumpkin spice everything. And the peppermint is my favorite. That's awesome. So tell us some other fun facts about you. Just give us a little backstory of your testimony, your story, and who you are.
Yeah, so I am actually born and raised here in Huntsville, Alabama, which is apparently a little rare these days. We have a lot of people moving to Huntsville. We always have. It's a great place to live and great place to grow up. So actually born and raised here, and I moved away when I was accepted to the University of Alabama, where I achieved my Bachelor's of Science in Social Work.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Sorry, I'm mute because I talk as people explain themselves and share things. I'm just like, oh, wow.
Okay, I thought I lost you.
No, you're good. That's amazing. And then, so you graduated from school and then you came back to work to be part of Refuge Church, right?
Yes, so my career actually started in Tuscaloosa because that's where I had done a lot of service work and volunteer, so my contacts were there. So I did begin my career in Tuscaloosa. And so I've been able to work in a variety of fields like mental health, therapeutic foster care. I've been working in hospice for over a decade now, so that medical social work aspect is there. And then it was time to move home. The rest of my family was also moving back home. And a hospice here was trying to launch a lot of what we had going on in Tuscaloosa. So it was just perfect timing to come back in and help with all of that as well. But since I've been back in Huntsville, I've been a part of launching a caregiving company, been an executive director of a nonprofit, and before all of that, before actually landing here full time at Refuge Church. So, been able to work in a variety of fields that have really helped be able to serve here as well.
I can only imagine. That's amazing. I want to know what drew you to this field of work. And for some people, like maybe we've heard of social work, but maybe don't know some of the ins and outs of what that means. Obviously, it's very broad, but
Mhm.
what drew you to it and what does that even mean for you?
Yeah, well, it wasn't my first major, actually. I declared a communications major originally. And a lot of people will probably remember Hurricane Katrina actually hit while I was in college. And I slowly began to realize, watching coverage and things, I didn't want to be a person who was just covering and delivering a message. I wanted to actually go and be there and serve. And so I started to really look and kind of figure out, what I wanted to do full time. And so I did change my major to social work, and I actually remember my they call it Fame Abound Day, your orientation day, going down to the university and being scared out of my mind. I was by myself. I actually didn't know where to go. So I went to the quad and stood there and started like people watching and realized who was with their parents. And so I just started following, following behind them. And I found my way to my orientation. And I'll never forget it because they said, engineers follow this flag, and hundreds of students stood up and left, and business followed this flag, and another 100 students stood up and left, and they said social workers follow this flag, and 5 of us stood up. And I remember thinking, what have I done? Nobody wants to do this. um, but but it was absolutely what I was supposed to do. And I have been in love with social work ever since. No regrets at all.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. I can just tell you have, and I know because we've talked before, but like your heart is so about people and truly caring for them and being with them in their stories. And I can only imagine. I have friends who have been in this field, and I know that it can be so draining and exhausting because it's really hard stuff you're up against. But at the same time, I can just see that you're anointed for it and it's so fulfilling and it's such a gift. Like Pastor Jason sings your praises because
Mhm,
you're such a
mhm.
gift to your church and your community. And I would love to see if you would tell us a little bit. I know some of us know about Refuge Church, I do, but for those who don't, tell us about the vision and the culture there and then kind of how your role comes into play on the team.
Yeah, so Refuge Church, this September, we are actually going to be 8 years old, celebrating 8 years. And I joined the church on its first birthday. So they had a year. So Pastor Jason had launched Refuge Church with a small team, and the culture here is it's definitely a care culture. The first priority in the vision of the church is um, to be a refuge to a hurting world, and to always first connect people to the power and the presence of Jesus Christ. And how we do that is where you start to feel that culture of, well, how are we going to do that? And that is to really be a healthy church. And that has been just a priority one. We want to be a church that cares. We want to be a healthy church. And then that also means that you provide the tools in order to be healthy, and understand that your vision is to be a refuge to a hurting world. So the people that are going to show up are going to be hurting, and they're going to be in pain. And so to be ready for that was definitely Pastor Jason's vision. And to have the tools and the people in place for that is just so important. Not anything that I had found up until that point. So I'm grateful for it every day. But that is, I think, what people feel, because when you hear them talk about Refuge Church, it's I found refuge here. Um,
That's amazing. I love it so much. Refuge Church, when I think about it, I got to visit one time and I don't even know if it was a year old yet, but I just
Mhm.
remember Pastor Jason walking us through and showing us the vision. And he had like all these dreams. I'm pretty sure it was written on paper. It was like, this is
Yes,
what
it is.
and it was all for the people. It was all about the community. And I remember he was so plugged in. He still is, like just being involved in Chamber of Commerce and just
Mhm.
every single thing that's possible. And it's incredible. So when he told me about your role, it just blew me away. Like this is just taking you guys to an even deeper level, being able to care for people with the hospice, with rooms of refuge, with the Refuge Market that you guys just
Yes.
opened. I would love to get you to share about that. We saw the video. I shared it with our Revolution community of you guys launching that out, but give us a snapshot. What is that all about?
Yes. So we've really done a lot of work with food ministry here, and so one of the main things that we've been known in the community for is those large scale distributions, which are wonderful. You know, you're ending up serving 40,000 pounds of food within an hour. So that's the large scale model. And so that actually is what helped inspire the Refuge Market, is to have another layer of part of that food ministry. So just being here full time, there are times when even like sometimes during the week we might have foot traffic or people just knocking on the door needing food. And so, of course, we had the food pantry, which is what a lot of churches have, and that's wonderful. And so, part of social work is really, from a macro level of social work, is evaluating any programs that you do have to see if there are any holes or how can they be more efficient, or is this in line with who we say that we are and what we are doing. And I started to really evaluate the food pantry during the week, and realize that, you know, how I was treating people wasn't how I wanted to treat them. I didn't want to say, well, hold on, you know, because I'm the only one here, so we didn't have any kind of security for me, and not let people in. Of course, they need to come inside the building. You're welcome here. So we needed to look at that, and really started to realize the food that I would do, the food boxes. I didn't know what they were allergic to. I didn't know what food that they liked or food that they didn't like. I didn't know what they already could have had in their own pantry. So how efficient was that in itself? So, and a friend actually asked me, why do you want to switch this from storage to a store? And that actually caused some reflection of, I realized that none of the people who had come back. So that was on me for how they felt when they left. Because when you feel like you've been treated with dignity and respect, you're going to come back. And some of these people were not. And so I would spend time, I would sit in our food pantry and just stare and start to dream and create, and really step out what a program and what systems we needed to have in place to do it differently. And at the root of it is just to make sure that people feel like we are serving in a way that shows that we love them and we care about them, and it's dignified. And changing the environment of the room from just storage to an actual store where they have uh, choice in what they're going to be taking home. And that is a huge part of any kind of program, is making sure that people feel like they have the right to choose it. They have their right, they have a voice even inside the program as they're going through it. And they are giving these choices. And that's where a lot of the empowerment is going to come from, because the way that it was operating, people didn't feel empowered. They seemed to feel embarrassed, and there was nothing to be embarrassed about. So that was something I love, looking at programs and just kind of flipping them on their head and doing something, um, it, not doing differently, but the approach may be different. how we provide that care may be different than what it was before.
I love that. I love that you have such a beautiful perspective to be able to refine that to where it is an experience for people. Like you said, the dignity thing is huge to my heart too. And a lot of our listeners, like, always looking at how can we make sure that the experience of those that we're serving really are feeling valued, they're feeling their hope awakened, and not just, hey, we're here to meet your needs and check the boxes, yay, but like really,
Mhm,
how do they
mhm,
walk away from that experience? So your perspective is such a gift to be able to look at it as an example of just like, how do we ask those questions, how do we grow and evolve and make things better? So that's incredible.
mhm.
I'd love to zone in a little bit more, zoom in, zone in, jump in, I don't know, one of those things. Just like, what does, if you were to give us a day in the life of your role on Refuge Church team, you obviously have your hands in a lot of different areas and you're able to speak into them. But just for people who want to like understand, what does this look like if we were to have this voice on our team, someone with this expertise, what kind of does your day to day look like? What are your responsibilities? What's your scope?
Um, well, it's quite a bit. So, the first thing is to kind of break down the different layers of it. There is some leadership that's involved with certain teams, and that mentoring of building the teams that you have within your church that makes sense to fall in line with a care pastor or a social worker. A lot of it may have to do with that connect side, because social workers are very good at the follow up, and that usually is an area that we all need to get stronger in, is following up with people, and most of the time people want you to, so that's important. The micro social work is something that you're going to see a lot of direct care involved. So people who are calling from the community for help, doing those assessments, really getting to the root of why are you in need? How can we help? How can we do a care plan that involves you so that and help you make the decisions and the help that you need and get that insight? Just really being involved with like the care team and identifying which lane, I guess you would say, of care is needed. There's many, it could be soul care, it could be resource care. Healthcare is a huge one. Navigating the healthcare system is extremely overwhelming when you have no experience in it. It's overwhelming for the professionals who are actually working in it to help people figure out where they should go, what their insurance coverage is, the help that they qualify for, and if they don't, where are they going to find it? That's a huge part of what I've been able to do here, even at a church, is help people navigate and figure out these systems. There's also the bereavement care. Working in hospice, we have a 13-month program of bereavement care, which we also are applying here at Refuge, because it's a lot of firsts happened. The first holiday after someone passes is very difficult, and being able to keep up with someone for 13 months, uh, even outside of what you see every Sunday, and plugging in, but also making those calls of how are you doing, even though it was 6 months ago or 8 months ago. That's very important. Financial care is a significant role. Creating financial care plans with people, figuring out the budgeting aspect. That's also a layer that you'll see from the Refuge Market, is giving people the choice of financial coaching. Is this something that you need? And the majority of people, I've even talked with people who are in their 60s, 70s, who reach out and say, I've never been taught how to budget. So it's not something just for a specific generation. I believe that the majority have probably never had any training in life skills, basic living skills, financial and budgeting. So that's been very important as well. And then there's also the crisis care, any kind of crisis intervention that's needed. Having someone who is licensed and trained on your side is extremely helpful. So that's kind of the more of the direct care, but in and it also ties into the macro level of the program development and the business development side of things. They're all like interdependent of each other. So when I walk into a home and I can see that now we're in a crisis because we don't have a caregiver in the home, what are we going to do? So we created a program called Moments Refuge, where we partnered with a legitimate caregiving company who provides certified nursing assistants and these caregivers. And Refuge Church will pay for the first 24 hours. So if I'm ever in a crisis situation or I walk into a crisis situation, how am I going to deal with it? I have that program kind of in my back pocket to offer and make sure that we can at least get some professional care in there to evaluate how much care we're going to need for how long, and to form an action plan. So it's not you're just on your own until we can figure this out. We actually have a program that we created to help with that direct care. So they're all related to each other. And the feedback that I can give from the front lines of doing direct care is important to kind of figure out, okay, well, how is this program going to work? Do we need this program at all? And that's a very important voice to have at the table, is having people who are licensed practitioners who have been on the front lines and inside and working inside these systems for years, coming back and saying, okay, that is a vision that you want for this church, and that's a program that you want to have. Here is how it actually works out in the real world. So this is how we can do it different. That has been probably one of the greatest things of being on this team, is having people who listen to that and are listening to social workers who are on the front lines and saying, we want to do it different.
That's huge, man. Wow, I've got a lot of different like things that are reflecting as you're talking. And one thing I'm thinking about is we just came out of Serve Day, like global Serve Day, churches just blasting their communities with kindness and telling people, hey, come to our church. We want to be there for you. Discovery. We're just like had that first connection point with a lot of people. And we use that as a momentum builder. But then a lot of the language we talk about in our curriculum is then there's a thing of building those consistent relationships and what are the next steps. So people are going to start coming to your church from these outreaches. How are we going to help them? And so I think your role being able to speak into that and help individuals, because it's stories being unfolded. No one story is the same. And so having someone like you who can know what those resources are, and you're really, I feel like your role is a lot about connecting the dots. You're listening to people, you're really taking in what are they feeling, what are they going through, what are their felt needs, what are some of their other needs they don't even know that they have, and then what are the resources we can connect them to as a church, as partners. So you're so big on connecting the dots, and I just want to know more about that, but also you talked about the macro and the micro, and you're so great at like building that bridge between the two and letting one inform the other. Speak to that and why that's so important for people. How do they complement each other?
Yeah, so I like to call kind of connecting the dots as the three C's. So you have your community, you have your church, and then you have your corporate world. And all can be involved with each other. All can sign on to the same vision and the mission. It's just really making sure that everyone knows about it. And that is another aspect of almost being kind of like a community pastor, where being able to say, yes, we serve our community, but there is also a little difference between serving and investing in the community as well, because serving is a form of investing, but there are multiple ways to invest into the community. So one aspect of that is a lot of the committees that I'm a part of, the board of directors that I'm a part of, that in these agencies that are in line with our vision and makes sense to be a part of. So that's been a huge part of being able to connect the dots and just know that yes, we're here to serve, but I'm also here to be a voice and to speak into this agency or this foundation and truly be able to say I'm investing in this just as much as y'all are going to be investing in some of our programs that you want to be a part of. So it's having those multiple roles and representing your church even at those types of meetings and really integrating yourself into the community on a regular basis and from different vantage points.
That's really cool. How do you keep up with all of this? Like, I feel like you zoom in and you zoom out, and I thrive that way myself, but like that's a lot of like just knowledge, a lot of things that you're processing. How do you like do all of this?
Jesus. Jesus is a really big component in that. And also just having a really good team here at Refuge. I think Pastor Jason has been very intentional and very strategic. Our church and our staff is diverse and dynamic. I like to even say it's multidisciplinary, and we all just bring these different gifts and perspectives to the table, and that has been amazing.
That is so cool. Nothing like a good team. When you got a good team, stuff goes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's cool. You're such a gift to that place and that family. Okay, I'm gonna jump. So I want to know. I'm gonna go ahead and ask this question right now because I'm guessing that our churches and our dream centers who are listening are like, wow, this is such a great idea to have someone of your expertise on our team, on our staff, but maybe they're not in a position to be able to hire somebody of that level yet, or maybe they just, they don't know somebody. How can they bring someone's expertise and perspective to the table? Someone who can just speak into it. What are some ideas they can start to kind of pursue this vein of serving and like you said, investing in people and discipling, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing I would suggest is really just pray about it. I was called to Refuge for an entire year before I actually showed up on my first Sunday here, and without a doubt, that was vision and that was prayer involved in that. So because I personally think that every church could probably benefit from having a licensed social worker on the team, but not every social worker is going to want to be a church social worker. And it is something to really spend time on in prayer and having a relationship with that individual who may be interested in church social work, because social work is a very unique field of practice. And it will be very important to know that the beliefs line up, the culture lines up, the code of ethics line up before ever even signing on, especially full time. But if you do have a church where you have a very clear vision and you know how you want to serve and where you want to plug into the community, there's going to probably be a field of social work that's involved with that. And really just reaching out and partnering. And for me, I was serving here and then also volunteering and practicing social work as a volunteer for 5 years before ever coming on full time. And so within that time, I was really able to learn the heartbeat and the DNA of this church, and vice versa. The church was able to really get to know me as well, and who I was as a person, but also who I was as a social worker and how I was able to practice and what my scope of practice is. And so that's really important, is to really know each other and how it's going to work. But a lot of prayer needs to be involved in that as well.
That is a perfect answer. And yeah, that's the thing. It's like maybe it's not up everybody's sleeve, but I feel like there are more people out there that we can connect to than we realize. There's people in our churches who there's so many connections. And I feel like for churches and dream centers who are wanting to go deeper and truly like take their serving to the next level, to a deeper space, to really and truly affect people's lives, I think just this is just gold, just to have the way that you're able to just like, it's almost like your heart permeates into the whole thing. It's such a gift,
Mhm.
like you said, to have that frontline experience and to be able to really listen and observe, and that is going to help shape more of the big picture. And I know I'm like kind of like being a dead horse, but it's just so cool to me to hear how it all works together, and how much you guys have been able to do, how much you've been able to accomplish, how many lives and stories you guys have been part of just through being willing and saying yes. And yeah, it's so
Yeah,
cool.
it's
Um,
definitely a yes environment here. And it's also important to remember too. I mean, this particular position is as a care pastor and licensed social worker. So even just seeing God involved with all of it has been important to really affirm it and validate it. Just to know that even the day that I received the call that morning, I was in my quiet time, my prayer time, and I realized I was coming up on 5 years of practicing here as a social worker, and I had always felt called here, and so even in that prayer time, I could feel that it wasn't time to move on, that this is where I was supposed to be, this is where you called me to be. And but it wasn't how I thought it was going to be. It didn't look like I thought it was going to look. But I remember saying, I will continue to serve the way that you want me to, where you want me to, even if it doesn't look the way that I thought it was, until you tell me to move. And I actually said, I accept. And then Pastor Jason called me that day to offer the position. And so just those moments will probably happen, that validation will happen, but also, to keep in mind when it is the right fit, it's going to be with a social worker and a church that both understand that, yes, you may be a pastor, but you're never not a social worker either. And really being able to understand that and respect that, and be able, it is possible that it can work. And I think that that's probably one of the most important things that I want people to know, is that this is very possible to have someone who is a licensed professional who does have a healthcare background be full-time in a church, and that it's very necessary, because most people that show up are going to be hurting, they're going to be in pain, and they don't know how to navigate a system. But it's very easy to show up in your lobby on Sunday morning in pain and hurting, and so you actually might be the very first place that they come to, and to be ready for that.
That's such good wisdom, Megan. It's so good. So good. Yeah, we're all part of this work, and that's the cool thing. I did want to ask, like, is say that somebody on the team at a church or a dream center is looking to build connections with people in social work. Where do they go? Like, can we find interns or people who are like in training for that? Or what are some practical ways that I can make connections like that if I have none?
Yeah, it would be, again, kind of going back to what kind of way that you want to serve. A lot of the ways that churches serve is tapping into social services in some way. So there's going to be social workers that are working in that field. There's also just looking into which universities have a program for social work, and signing an MOA or MOU to have them be interns at your church. That is something that, especially pre-COVID, I was working with one of the universities that's local here to actually let a church be a field placement for the field of social work, which was not an option when I was going through school. So that is a passion of mine, as well, as to have it at least be an option for people who do want to practice church social work. And I think that is a step in the right direction of legit making it a legit field of practice for social workers.
Very cool. I love the work you do. You like don't stop. You're like, I got this, that treatment, this and that. So I don't even know. You're a mighty person and I love it. Okay, I have a couple more questions. I want to know, what are some practical, like, best practices, tips, philosophies when it comes to serving people? So even just like a person who has no experience in social work or pastoral care, but they're helping with outreach at their church. Maybe they're leading outreach. I love to just like look at, like you said, with the pantry, even just how do we refine this? How do we really interact with people in a way that gives them dignity, helps them feel love? What are some of your philosophies on that, or best practices that you would share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think one of the first steps is being able to decide what is your outreach going to look like. Are you going to be partnering with agencies that already exist and you want to serve as manpower for that mission that they already have, that the community is aware of? Or are you wanting to do program development where you do know of these agencies and you do know of these services that exist, but you also can see where there are gaps in the care? So you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel or duplicating services, you're complementing the ones that already exist and you're practicing them in a different way. So just determining which one you actually want to do will help. That would be step one. And then the second thing would be to do the research, which is very humbling because you do have to reach out and you do have to learn the landscape of your area, where your church has a footprint, whether it's from a county standpoint or a region standpoint or the state. Just really learning the landscape of the area that you want to serve and what resources are there, and building those relationships, and then going from there. Do you want to, is there a need to build something or complement something, or is it just a serve situation? But also just knowing that serving is also a form of advocating for people, and a way to kind of discern how you're advocating is, are you advocating from a place of anger or empathy? Because there's a lot of situations out there. If your church is really going to be in the community investing and serving, you're going to see social injustice. You're going to see these social issues that do have righteous anger involved with them, because that's what gives you the spark to pioneer something or something new. And just knowing the difference between advocating from anger and advocating from empathy, because empathy takes a lot more effort than anger. Anger can be manipulated. And so just knowing that we have to deal with those emotions, even as a staff, as a church, before we actually go out and serve and advocate for people, so that we can actually be effective when we are, because we are way more effective when it comes from a place of empathy than anger.
This is so good, Megan. And yeah, I'm glad that you said that. That's a hard one too, especially right now. There's so much to advocate for. And I have been on that side too. Sometimes I'm like, don't you see? Don't you understand? Why don't you get it? Like, this is a problem. But then I've had personal experiences where God convicted me and was like, but don't you remember before you saw that? Like, that was a blind spot for you in the past. So why don't you be part of building a bridge and being like, that's a solution more so than yelling at somebody or fussing at someone because they don't know. Like, help them know. And that helped me so much, just to be like, okay, slow down a little bit and let's bring people along just like God brought me along. So that's some great advice coming from empathy. Thank you for that. I will remember that one forever.
Yes, okay. And they already know. I mean, the places that you're trying to partner with, if there are gaps in care, they know that already. They know where those exist. So being able to form those partnerships, and advocacy is an art, is what I tell people. It's an art form. And so when you're in these meetings with these executive directors, and that's actually one of the first things that we do, is if we ever as a church have a program that we're building, because we do see the need in the community, then we will meet with the directors of agencies that mirror that service. And those meetings go great because we're coming in before they're hearing it from us. They're not hearing it through the community that there's another service like this. We're meeting with them first just to learn about, just gain their wisdom, their knowledge of this service, and make sure that they understand that we're not going to be a competitor, right? We're not going to come in and be a competitor to your nonprofit, because and this is something I would tell leaders is, if you ever get pushback of don't duplicate services, don't duplicate resources, or you're reinventing the wheel, but this is a part of your vision, and God has called you to help in this way. That's something that I would really encourage you to sit down with those people and really listen to, why are you saying that? Because as a social worker, I'm never going to tell anybody that there are too many resources, right? Because there's always going to be a need. There will always be a need. I will never work myself out of a job. There's always going to be people in need. So when people are saying that, really sit down with them and get to know, where is that coming from? Is it coming from a place of fear? Because it's not duplicating resources that may be a problem. It may be because there's not a duplication of donors. So being able to sit down and have that honest discussion of, we have this vision and it's going to complement your program or your agency, and we have people who are already invested in it, who are your donors, so there's not that overlap. Those meetings go so well because we're not coming in as a competitor, and we're coming in as someone who's going to complement what they're doing. And that's probably been the most successful thing with even like that macro level of what we're doing here, is having those meetings. And I've had a director look at me in surprise when I said, well, you're part of this. The fact that y'all are here has been a huge contribution to us being able to do like the Refuge Market, because they are doing what they're doing. We get to do it this way. But if they weren't already doing what they're doing in the way that they're doing it, with the criteria that they have and the regulations they have, we wouldn't be able to supplement anything. We would have to be doing what they're doing. So they are just as much a part of everything that we do here, even without realizing that they've contributed. And so to have those meetings and that be the first thing that's on the table is, thank you for what you do, because now we get to do this. That's really going to help move everything forward.
That is brilliant. I love it. You called it an art, and that is so cool. It's like just the humility that you guys come in with and the true, genuine heart to work together. And you're just so intentional. I think that's it. It's not strategic as much as it is intentional, because I feel like intentional is about the people, and you guys just take your time, and it's just such great advice to be so aware and so connected. And that's one of the things that I value the most about y'all, is just how connected you are. And I feel like you're just great team players, not just together as a team in the church, but just in the whole. You're for the city, you are for the community, and that really shows and makes favor happen. And that's so cool. It unlocks a lot for you guys. So that's brilliant advice, so much wisdom. Okay, two last questions. One is there like a story that you carry with you that kind of, I'm sure you have thousands and thousands of stories, but is there one that you would share with us today of just like that keeps you going, keeps you connected to your why, that something you'll never forget maybe?
Yeah, I always am really careful with those kind of questions, because I do have so many ongoing care situations. I don't want to say cases, because these aren't clients, they're his children, but that are just actively going on. And I never want anyone to feel like they're a part of that. Their situation is a part of that discussion, because care is so confidential. But I think one of the greatest things, especially over the past year and just being full time, has been the greatest impact has been the community's reception of it. The community really being on board and understanding and being for having licensed practitioners on church staff. I think it's one of those things where we're going to feel for a while that it's this revolutionary idea, when actually it is the root and the history of our country. Social work began in churches because there was a church long before there was a government. So it is part of the history. And I think that that's probably been one of the biggest impacts here has been the yes from the community. There's not been any question about it. There's not been any pushback. It's been, well, we're going to call you when we need something. I was receiving calls yesterday from agencies, and it's really just about social workers being trained and educated on critical thinking skills and being able to ask the right questions and helping in a multitude of situations. So even other agencies are calling, asking for help. Other states have been calling because they have somehow heard that there was a social worker at a church. So other churches have been calling from out of state. So the need is there. I think that's probably been one of the greatest impacts that we've seen so far is maybe, of course, there's individual situations, but even from a larger standpoint, it's had a ripple effect.
That is amazing. I cannot wait. I know we've talked. I can't wait to see like how God uses you guys to influence and be such an example. And who knows like what's going to happen, but I just feel like there's going to be some really beautiful things taking place all across the country, in the world, who knows. So thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the vision that you have. If you could recommend something for our listeners, maybe like a favorite book that you have or a podcast you listen to, if we want to know Megan's mind, what should we be reading
Oh gosh.
or listening?
Well, I guess for any leaders that are interested in probably social work, it would of course be the great Brene Brown. She has a podcast. She has several books. She's incredible. Definitely a mentor in the realm of social work. So anything from her, and that would be a recommendation.
Best answer. I'm with you. Brene Brown is amazing. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Okay, are you on social media? I know Refuge is at Find Refuge here on Instagram.
Yes.
You on socials or?
Yeah, well, Find Refuge here is pretty much across the board. So even our website, that's how you'll be able to connect with us. And if you write in, you will definitely be hearing back from me as well.
Awesome. Megan, thank you so much for your time. I'm inspired. I know everybody who listened is inspired, and we just honor you guys. We love y'all. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been incredible. And yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you guys all for listening today. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time on the Serve Group. Bye.